but said the pragmatic approach was to try settlement first, that we could always file suit if they refused to negotiate in good faith. I told her to set it up, but I wasn't expecting anything good to come from it. The DNA results arrived Friday in a plain envelope, and I opened it already knowing what it would say. The test confirmed I was Dad's biological son with 99.9% certainty, shutting down any possible argument that I wasn't entitled to be involved in his care or pursue claims on his behalf. Giovanni called an hour later to say he'd received the results and was filing them with APS as part of the official record, one more piece of documentation proving our relationship and my legal standing. I filed the report in our evidence folder and added it to the cloud backup, this proof of something I'd never doubted, but that the system required me to verify anyway. 3 days after the DNA results arrived, Ricardo called while I was making breakfast in the motel kitchenette. He said the VA finished reviewing Dad's representative payee change, and it was pending final approval within the next 2 weeks. They placed interim holds on the account to stop any unauthorized access during the transition, which meant Mom and Mark couldn't touch anything while the paperwork processed. I asked what happens once it's approved, and Ricardo explained I'd have legal authority to manage Dad's benefits, full control over the money that was supposed to support us all these years. Dad was sitting at the tiny table listening to my side of the conversation, and when I hung up and told him what Ricardo said, his hands started shaking. I reached across and held them steady until he nodded and took a breath. The settlement conference happened the following Tuesday at Legal Aid, in a small conference room with a scratched table and flickering overhead lights. Artemisia sat next to me with her laptop open and 3 folders of documentation stacked in front of her. Mom arrived first with her attorney, a middle-aged guy in a wrinkled suit who looked like he'd rather be anywhere else. Mom's eyes were already red and puffy, like she'd been crying in the car, and when she saw me, she reached out like she wanted to hug me, but I just stared at her until she sat down. Mark showed up 10 minutes late without a lawyer, dropping into a chair and immediately starting in about how this whole thing was a misunderstanding, and we were making him look bad at work. Artemisia ignored him completely and opened the first folder, laying out bank statements showing the pattern of transfers from Dad's benefits to their joint account. Mom's attorney shifted in his seat and started taking notes. Artemisia walked through each document methodically, her voice calm and factual, pointing out dates and amounts and the timeline of when Dad was hospitalized versus when the transfers started. Mom kept interrupting with excuses about how confused she was after losing her husband and how she thought she was doing the right thing. Mark got louder, insisting they had power of attorney and everything was legal, but Artemisia just pulled out the questioned document and asked if he'd like to explain why the signature didn't match any of Dad's other signatures on file. The room went quiet, except for the buzz of the fluorescent lights. I sat there watching Mom perform her grief, while Mark cycled through anger and defensiveness, and something shifted in my chest. I wasn't angry anymore.